Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Eva Monheim.
And I'm Hal Rosner. We are both certified arborists through the International Society of Arboriculture. The purpose of our podcast is to encourage tree planting and proper tree care for our urban forests, which include neighborhoods, parks, and other open spaces.
We will also cover a myriad of tree topics, including the important role trees play in relationship to the climate crisis. Thank you for joining us.
Verdant Earth Educators provides dynamic in-person training and online learning opportunities for environmental and horticultural businesses. Owned by ISA-certified arborists and former university faculty, the Verdant Earth Educator team provides consultations on tree care and recommends climate-resilient opportunities for your valued green spaces. Verdant Earth Educators is all about seeding knowledge for success. Find Verdant Earth Educators at verdanteartheducators.com.
Monheim Microphones designs and handcrafts top-tier studio microphones and preamps right here in the United States in Hollywood, California. Their incredible line of innovative microphones and designs are used around the world by everyone from podcasters to top-charting record producers and singers. Monheim Microphones, unparalleled excellence. MonheimMicrophones.com. The Urban Wood Network gives people strength in numbers and a collective voice to showcase the growing environmental impact of an industry like urban wood utilization. This is really critical in a world where resource recovery and carbon storage benefits can go a long way to meet the needs of climate sustainability goals of cities, businesses, and consumers. Contact us at urbanwoodnetwork.org. This podcast is being recorded on January 24th, 2025. Ethan Kauffman is the first director of Stoneleigh, a natural garden, where he has led the transition from a private estate to a public garden over the last 8 years. He developed his love of the natural world exploring the Susquehanna River Hills in southeastern Pennsylvania. He cultivated his horticultural perspective over 2 decades of gardening in the Deep South, including as a director of Moore Farms Botanical Garden, where he also led the transition from a private pleasure garden to a public botanic garden. Drawing on influences from both regions, he enjoys creating a garden experience at Stoneleigh that inspires others to garden for beauty, biodiversity, and the health of our planet. Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast, Ethan. We're delighted that you can join us this afternoon.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Ethan, are you originally from the Delaware Valley?
I'm not. I'm from close by. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half from where I live now. So pretty close, you could say.
Yeah. And horticulturally rich out there in Lancaster County, I would say. Did you get the benefit of all that growing up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like sweet corn was always a big deal when that came in season. You go to the wagons on the side of the road. But I have to tell you, I am a huge whoopie pie fan. Have you ever had whoopie pies?
I'm a huge whoopie pie. Probably a podcast for another time, man.
Okay.
But yes.
Not
You've hit the sweet spot.
Wait a second. Now that you started this, you have to explain it to our listeners. You can't just do that. That's not okay.
All right. Let's do it. Ethan, go ahead. Tell us.
Well, it's a good Lancaster County tradition. It's a Pennsylvania Dutch dessert treat. You've got your 2-cake, brown cake, and then you've got this cream in the middle, and it's delicious, creamy deliciousness. Yeah.
Now, there's a dark side to whoopie pies, though, Ethan.
What is that?
Well, if you dissect the creamy stuff, we're not really talking about an authentic dairy-based product there. I think the Amish have kind of cut some corners, possibly, with some of that hydrogenated oils and stuff. But I don't want to spoil it because I don't think it's going to stop you, and I don't think it's going to stop me.
No, I just forget those last 30 seconds, and I'll move on with my love affair with whoopie pie.
Yes. Yeah, and a glass of milk, Perfect.
Well, and you used to be able to buy them wrapped up, and I think I don't know what company
No, they're
was
still
that
out there.
sells it, but you could buy them, and
Yeah.
sometimes people would give them out and was an expensive trick or treat, but some people gave them out at trick or treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But getting back to horticulture, growing up Lancaster County, did you get to plunge your hands into dark, loamy soils and learn about plants?
I definitely plunge my hands in dark, loamy soils, and that's exactly what it is out there. It's gorgeous. But, with my mom and dad gardens, so I spent time in the garden with them. But really, I was mostly drawn to the natural world when I was a kid. So grew up in southern Lancaster County as well as the city. And, we were always at the Susquehanna River, always tromping around the streams and looking at, back then I loved snakes and salamanders and all those things. And so it sort of instilled that love of nature in me from an early age. And I'm really grateful for that.
Excellent. Excellent. So snakes in southern Lancaster County, the Susquehanna River, and then you found your way to horticulture. What was that journey like?
I feel like there are two kinds of people in the world, those that know they want to work in horticulture and those that just comes to them by accident. And I think there are a lot of people in the latter camp, and I'm one of them. So, I was working in Lancaster County on a corn research farm of all places right after college. And it was fun. We go out and pick the corn in the evening and put it in these machines, and it would analyze it. And that closed after the summer. And the manager said, I think you did a pretty good job. And I know a place, a nursery, where I think they're looking for somebody if you're interested. And I was like, a nursery? I don't know, sure. And that's what I worked at a wholesale nursery. I didn't know what horticulture was before I even started. I was like, what horticulture? It seems so esoteric, right? But it was great.
Very cool. And then you worked your way to Stoneleigh, and we are so glad to have the Stoneleigh Garden join the Delaware Valley's portfolio of horticultural gems. Were you working at Stoneleigh and then applied for the job, or?
No, I was down in South Carolina where, I had been for 20 years. I had a whole horticulture career down there. I loved it. And the thing about South Carolina, it's not like the America's garden capital. Gardens are an hour and a half apart. So you sort of develop in a little bit more isolation, which is, it's actually kind of interesting because you're not influenced by as many other places. You're sort of developing on your own and sort of finding your own way. And then when I came up here, I was like, oh my gosh, there are all these amazing gardens. It was unbelievable. So yeah, I had a friend that was in the Longwood program, and she said, there's this new garden opening up. They just put it on our listserv. Maybe you should apply for it. And I said, well, maybe I should. And that's what happened.
Fantastic.
Stoneleigh, you've been there how long now at Stoneleigh? 8 years?
8 years. I came in the end of 2016. Mm-hmm.
Can't believe it.
I know. Eva, it seems like you were just bringing the Longwood class out there the first time all those years ago. Where did the time go?
I have no idea. And I was thinking the same thing when I was reading your bio, and I'm saying to myself, what, 8 years? How did that happen? I remember Jason Wirtz was your first horticulturalist, right, on staff?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He graduated from my class at Longwood and went right to work for you. And that was really exciting. It was a great time, But the unusualness of Stoneleigh for the natural lands, can you talk about that?
Yeah. So Natural Lands, first of all, if you're not familiar, is an amazing organization. I feel so fortunate to be part of it. It's, kind of bragging, but I feel like it's the best organization I've worked for. And we protect land, thousands of acres in eastern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey. We have 42 gorgeous nature preserves that we own and operate that are free and open to the public. And then we have all these great ways to connect with the natural world through events, through volunteerism. And, all my coworkers within the organization, everyone's mission driven, they're passionate. It's really great. And so Stoneleigh is the only public garden in natural lands. So it does make it pretty unique.
And does that give you a lot of extra, maybe I should use the word chutzpah, to really kind of, zip up your garden because the other places are more natural and open? You're working with a formal garden. Yeah,
it's interesting. Honestly, I think we take a lot of inspiration from our preserves. I personally spend a ton of time out there walking in them and just sort of enjoying the natural world, but also seeing how these plants are performing, seeing the combinations that occur there. And we're able to kind of take that back into the garden and sort of distill it and into what we're doing at Stoneleigh. So we're creating these gardens that are kind of, in some ways, representative of the land around us, of these preserves around us. And what's really cool is we get to go and collect all these different seeds. We have 23,000 acres in preserves. So we go out there and collect seeds and cuttings of all these plants. We grow them in the greenhouse and we put them in the garden. So it truly bringing the preserves into Stoneleigh and our native flora into a more refined space.
Okay, so the natural wooded sites that one might think of when they're thinking about natural lands trust, you're saying is also a seed bed for your formal gardens. You can bring stuff in that's been collected elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And by doing that, we can work with species that are underutilized, maybe underappreciated. You know, I love a good unknown plant that might be a little weedy in some people's minds, but if you can show them how to use it in a garden setting, maybe they'll want to use that. You know, I think we have a lot of plants that need to be celebrated. With native plants, we have, I feel like there's a pile of like 50 perennials, and then there's not a lot beyond that, but it's increasing, it seems like every year. So we have opportunity to trial some of these and test them, and that's what we do with public gardens, right?
Yeah, and so the follow-up to that then, Ethan, is it going to be a mission for Natural Lands coordinating with Stoneleigh to formally inventory what's out there? In other words, as a continued seed source. I'm excited about this because it also makes me think that Natural Lands could start providing seed sources to other nurseries, other institutions, other botanical gardens. And I raise this question because seed shortages are coming up in so many of our discussions.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, we have a wonderful team of folks that manage those lands that are really well versed in what they're doing. And they have oftentimes really good inventories of what's already there. And I know there are partnerships in place with other organizations for seed collecting. And it is important to get that local ecotype out there because with nursery stock, let's face it, a lot of it's clonal. And so it's nice to have different genetics get thrown into the mix too.
When I first came there, I couldn't imagine what you were going to do because I have to explain that I was there and I took photos really early on, and I was there with the women in horticulture who helped plant the parking lot. And I remember some of the plants that were going in, and then I come back later on and I see so much more. You had some really interesting plants that I'd never seen anywhere else. And I'm going to talk about wanted to talk about the variegated redbud, which I just love. When I started walking around the pathway, there's this, I think it's called alley cat. And it just knocked my socks right off. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And you have some really old, ancient trees on the property too. Can you talk a little bit about those and how you make your tree picks?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love plants. I am crazy about plants, and we're always looking to acquire new and interesting things like the variegated. We have 30 different cultivars of redbud that we grow. We have 30 different eastern red cedars that we grow, almost 30 rural honeysuckles. So we're always interested in new, and we're old. I love the old-fashioned cultivars. We're straight species. We've got tons of those. So I think what we want to do is really get people excited to grow native plants. And sometimes cultivars are really the best entry point for the average consumer that might not understand about native plants yet. So we hope that they're kind of drawn in by that, And then, of course, you mentioned the big trees. Oh my gosh, we have such an amazing collection of big 100-year-old plus trees. And, my favorite one, I think, is the one that I park under every day. It's a huge bur oak, and it's wider than it's tall, which is kind of rare. Oftentimes trees are a little bit crowded. And this one's massive. It's probably 80 feet by 90 feet. And when I walk under this thing every day, I just feel this sense of calmness. I feel a sense of strength from that tree, sort of a sheltering of its boughs, above me. And there's something really soulful about old trees. Don't you agree? I mean,
oh my gosh. You walk on that and you just feel enveloped in the largeness of the trees. And you think, I thought I saw the biggest one, but no, when I get to Stoneleigh, I saw even a bigger one, even the taxus that are there and the Chamaecyparis that are there. How many times they've air layered themselves into the soil. And you think, this is like sculpture when you look at it. And it happens because of time. It's all about time and how much you let the plant do what it wants to do on its own. And that is really a gift because you don't usually get a chance to see that.
Absolutely. And what's really special about Stoneleigh is these old trees, the family that lived there, the Haas family, they were wonderful stewards. And one thing they didn't do is they didn't lollipop all their trees. So like even you said, we've got these branches that are layering into the ground and these arborvitae that look like squid. They don't even look like arborvitae. And they're allowed to grow wild like they're beyond the original design intent. It's so magical. I love it.
And your pergola, I think it's probably one of maybe the longest one I've ever seen in the United States. I might have seen one longer in Europe, and I'm thinking maybe Newby Hall area, but the pergola is absolutely spectacular. I mean, I think that is the stunner of all stunners, especially since you've designed the plant material, because there was nothing around it before. And it's beautiful, the beautiful schist stone that makes it up, and the mica schist, if anybody has never seen it, it's sparkly and it's a natural from the Wissahickon schist. And it's just so magnificent. I get really excited when I talk about stone too.
Stone, I'm glad to hear you say that. But first of all, thank you for your kind words. We really appreciate that. When we first came and we saw this pergola, of course, we knew the possibilities. We're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. But our guests, before we planted anything on it, before we renovated it, they're like, what is this thing for? It's this big, long stone thing. And I'm like, well, obviously promenading, right? Have you never promenaded? I don't know that I've ever done that either, but we built these things to be atmospheric, and then you might take a stroll through them with your friend or somebody that you were looking to get to know better. And but for us, we knew it was a perfect place for native vines. We were like, this is going to be a great place to showcase them. So we designed it and we put like 20 different native vines on this thing. We planted it in one day with our volunteers. It was awesome. There's so much. We couldn't do what we do with something without them, but planted this pergola, and now it's very romantic. Vines all over the place, roses and wisteria, shrubs, perennials. It's really kind of wild, which we love.
It's a real beautiful focal point. And the other thing that I really love about your plants, you have a beautiful hedge that you created. And I love the fact that it's not a solid hedge of one type of plant. You have chosen to put maybe 5 or 6 different types of plants in this hedge. That's where we should be going with hedges, because it creates a diversity. And it's not a hedgerow because it doesn't have the depth that a hedgerow would have with, the multitudinal levels of hedging. But it's that beautiful structure of a hedge with different types of textures. And some bloom, some are evergreen, some are deciduous, some are not. It's great.
Yeah, that was so much fun. We had this big, long expanse next to this pathway where the old tennis court was, and there was a hedge there decades ago. And so when we came to something, we're like, you know what, we kind of want to close this off again, but we didn't want to do like an arborvitae hedge, like you said, a monoculture. So we thought we'll do this thing we call the wildlife hedge, and so it's more than 5 or 6 species. It's about 65 different woody plants in this hedge. Vines, there's clematis in there, honeysuckle. We have variegated redbuds, all kinds of things, and a double row, and we sheared about 8 feet tall. And it really is fun and interesting. It's dynamic. And the best part is when we have groups or tours, we can really talk about resiliency. If you have more than one species in a hedge, it's going to be much more resilient. We can talk about the benefits to wildlife because there's so many different species that are going to benefit a much broader array. Then I think it's visually much more dynamic and sort of interesting to me. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. It's one of my favorite parts too.
Well, and I also think too that, when you have a large monoculture of plants, you become a magnet for diseases and insects. And I've seen whole hedgerows just totally die that are arborvitae, just totally die. I've seen at least 6 of them on my drive back and forth to the city near my home here. And I just get really upset when I see that, because I said, okay, well, now that they have holes in their hedge, why can't they just fill it with something else? Not the same thing. Fill it with maybe a nice big leatherleaf viburnum or something that's going to bloom. And that's evergreen too, a leatherleaf viburnum, but it's going to have a different stature to it. And it's going to be a different color, and that texture, of course, is really fun. But that's what I noticed about your eye for collecting and selecting. Even your espaliers against the walls of the structures that are there, the espalier against the house, the redbud that you have growing up the wall. It's just stunning, and creativity abounds too. That's one thing I've really noticed. It's creative.
Well, thanks. I think we have this opportunity with native plants to use them in a way in this former estate, and if you can use native plants in this creative way around the formal estate and on the main line, you can use them anywhere. And I think we're always at Stoneleigh looking to push boundaries. We're willing to fail. And I think failure is such a huge part of horticulture it's never talked about when you go to symposium or conferences. People don't show their failures, but that's what drives us forward. If we're not trying new things, if we're not pushing ourselves, it's boring to me. What's the big deal about creating something that's been done for 100 years already? So I think we love to try and new things, and if we fail, we fail.
What's the thought process, Ethan? I'm thinking about how summer in the Delaware Valley ended, summer of 2024. And I guess we had, 60 plus days of drought. And what was the mindset of your staff in terms of evaluating performance? Did the natives more or less hold up? Can you give us a glowing, upbeat report on that?
Well, the mindset of the staff, I think like everybody in this region that's caring for a landscape was, a little bit frustrated with all the watering and the heat, but they were awesome. They did a great job. We only lost one or two small things, but honestly, I think it's sort of a myth when people say native plants are more, better adapted to certain aspects of the landscape than exotic plants, because there are plenty of native plants that are from wetlands, that are from higher elevation, and what region are you talking about that's native? The Great Lake region of Pennsylvania is far different than the coastal plain of Pennsylvania. So
sure.
There are plenty of exotic species that are really well adapted to this, as we all know. In fact, some adapted, they sometimes get out and cause problems. But generally, our plants did well because we have such a good team that they really cared about what they were watering and taking care of.
Yeah, and actually, I have to confess, thank you for educating me, because I was operating, I'm new to the native plant game. In fact, I barely have dipped my toe into that discussion and the plants available to the consumer. I'm doing some garden conversion here at my home, but I was operating like, it's perennial meadow plant. It'll be fine. I'll never have to water, but it sounds like that's not realistic.
That's a great, sure. The native plants that you find in naturally, meadows, dry meadows, of course, they're going to be well adapted to drought conditions, but there are plenty of native plants that aren't from those spaces that aren't as well adapted. So
Right. And I just wanted to circle back. You guys were both extolling the wonders and beauty of that hedge with the eclectic mix. It does strike me that a hedge with, a half a dozen species is going to require a little bit more horticultural know-how in terms of the maintenance. I think Joe, consumer, is still probably really big on that arborvitae hedge, the Leland cypress hedge, the, things we see over and over again. And it is a very limited palette, but that uniformity and monoculture is pretty popular, remains pretty popular.
Yeah, I agree that it takes a little more horticultural know-how, but honestly, it doesn't take a lot, because essentially what you're doing is planting these things together and you're shearing them like you would anything else. You're just allowing them to mix and grow together. And some things we do in the garden, a lot of gardens, they're aspirational. The homeowner is not going to go home and recreate this exact scene, and nor should we be doing those things, because you don't go to a museum to see something that a student drew. You want to see the masters. And sometimes you want to see what a student, sometimes that's fun too. But, sometimes you want to be inspired by something that's different.
Yeah. I wanted to ask also, you guys struck on one of my favorite plants, which is just that common red cedar, Juniperus virginiana. And you said you have like 30 varieties growing there?
I am so crazy about that plant. That is one of my favorite woody natives. And it's so versatile. Like, you probably like it for that same reason. It grows in dry. It can take a little bit moist. It can even take some shade, and it's tough as nails and evergreen and has good wildlife value. Cedar waxwings. Love it. It's great for sheltering animals and nest building. And it's an awesome tree.
What I like about your use of the Juniperus virginiana Taylor, which is a very narrow, tall plant, it actually looks like an Italian cypress, which is why people like it, because if they want to create a European look garden, they can use it. But it's just so resilient. And the way it's used in front of the house, creating these verticals that accentuate the design of the house and the chimneys. That's what I gather from that. When I look at the house from far away around the circuit, there's a walk past. And I hope everybody that's listening eventually gets a chance to go there. You just go there. What days are you not open?
Only closed on Mondays, open
Mondays.
10 to
Okay.
5.
So they can come anytime and just take a walk around the circuit of the whole entire property and just take it in like you're the estate owner and put your hands behind your back and walk and just take a look at how the plants are positioned. And that, to me, the tailored junipers really are stunning there because it just accentuates the chimney of the house. That's what I love about it.
You ever see a plant that you're like, I wish I would have found that thing? That's one of those plants. I'm like, I wish I would have found that. It came from Nebraska, in Nebraska. And so, yeah, it looks just like an Italian cypress, doesn't it? And that's kind of why we wanted that formality there in front of the house, but we didn't want to block the entire thing. So it's kind of the perfect tree for us.
And it's called Taylor?
Taylor. Taylor. And one of the other things, too, I noticed that it only gets to be like 3 feet wide or 3 feet round, and it can get to be 20, 25 feet tall, maybe 30 feet tall. And I was thinking, in the city where you have such narrow places to plant things, and if you wanted to cover up a ugly wall, or maybe because you can't get a mural painted on the wall, you could put a hedge of that up against a wall, and it could take the heat, it could take the dry, it could take the pH level in the city, and you would have a beautiful green buffer, and it would be cooling. It would be a cooling effect, but it's great, even though it doesn't have berries because it's a male plant. It's great for habitat because it's so tight. The little birds can get in there, like little sparrows and house wrens and things like that, where they can be protected from cats and other prey that, they become prey to some other animals in the city.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Some other plants that we use, like sweet gum, slender silhouette, that's another great urban plant because it is adaptable and it doesn't take up any real estate because it's so skinny. Yeah, and I think we have a lot of uses for those plants. I'd love to see more oak trees of our native oaks that are dwarf or columnar to fit them in these small spaces. They're just so big for a lot of commercial landscapes or home landscapes.
Can you talk about your champion trees?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we're talking about these big trees here, but we have, I think, about 12 that are on the PA Big Trees site, and 2 of them are state champions. And my favorite is a catalpa tree. It's a state champion, co-champion. It's not the number one. It's like 1A. But it is awesome. When I was a kid, I called these bean trees, right? Because they have the long pods that hang down. And, I didn't know. It was like, oh, it's a bean tree. And now I know it's a catalpa, but huge leaves, like dinner plate size. They have trumpet flowers and they're white with kind of orangey center. And when they drop, they litter this entire garden space where it grows. And it's like a snow covering of these huge flowers. I love it.
And they smell good too.
And yes. And in the South, I was in the South for a long time. Well, they use that tree they grow it for the worms, for the caterpillars, for fishing. So you'll see in these rural yards, have like a line of Coppice catalpa. They keep maybe, 6 or 8 feet tall, and they'll pick the caterpillars off every year and they put them in the freezer and then they go fishing. So I've done that with some friends and they work. I can vouch.
That's interesting because it looks a lot like Paulownia, the leaves, only they're truly heart-shaped, the ones on catalpa, where sometimes Paulownia could be a little bit like have a 3rd or 4th ear on the leaf, or lobe, but they are definitely a really beautiful tree. And it is a gorgeous tree. You're right. It's just, and you can't get your arms around it because it's that big. It's that big. And you know what I love? The other one is your cucumber magnolia, which is enormous.
That one's really special too. I didn't even know they got that big. When I came to Stoneleigh, somebody said, well, that's a cucumber magnolia. And I said, wait, what? It is? And what is it about hugging trees? It's kind of banal at this point, but when you hug a tree, it actually does feel really nice, doesn't it? I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun thing.
Absolutely.
No, you're amongst tree huggers here, Ethan. So.
Oh, good. I figured as much.
I have to hug them. It's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite tree hugging story, Ethan, was inspecting a tree for a buddy at a public garden, and he wasn't on site. He lives on site. Okay, it was Andalusia. And I thought, oh, Bill's not around. Bill. Here's this fabulous oak. I'm deep in the woods. I'm going to hug this oak. And of course, Bill had it on he's a hunter, so he had it on a wildlife camera and was able to remotely see me hugging this tree. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really...
So, hey, at least it was only hugging. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It's true, though. You know,
that's a Friday afternoon joke.
I think it's magical to be around these large trees that you just think, you know, I wonder what they saw in their lifetime, you know? They're just so big. And of course, the Haas were very generous people to donate that. Did they donate the house to?
Oh my gosh, they're extraordinary and extraordinarily generous. And yeah, donated. It was their family home for 80 years. And they donated all 42 acres, including the house, to natural lands. Yeah, it's so special.
And there's also something very special about it, too, about the organ. Most people don't know anything about that. Can you give a little bit of information about that?
Well, of course. I love the organ. We have, we call it the main house. It was the estate house, but there is a 1931 Aeolian Skinner pipe organ in the basement. And you think, why is there an organ in the basement? Well, it's because we have a nonprofit in the main house called the Oregon Historical Society that we share that space with. And their, mission is pipe organs. And so that's why we have an organ down there. And it's so cool. It is amazing. When it's played, you can feel, if you go down there when it's being played, you can feel this resonating in your chest, almost like, firecrackers, that kind of those big ones that make you, you can feel it inside. That's what it feels like. So it's a beautiful instrument.
And you also have a library there too, don't you?
Yeah, they have a lot of archives, a lot of old books about organs. And if you're interested in seeing any of these things, we do performances with them in the spring, and an organist plays in the house. You get to see the house and hear great music, and it's a lot of fun. Our website, by the way, is stoneleghgarden.org if you're interested in our events or learning more about us.
That's really great.
One of the images on the website is the skeletal remains of a very large tree. And a couple of years back, first of all, is it still standing? As I remember, there was a decision to leave it standing because of its potential for habitat.
Oh, yeah. It was a huge plane tree in front of the house. And we have photos of that thing from like 1915. And it was huge back then. And so we knew it had been there for more than a century, right? And it had canker stain early on. And, if you know canker stain, it's really bad. And it just was declining every year. And we thought, we just have to do something about this tree. But we thought, we didn't want to just cut it down, flush cut it, and then stump grind it out. It had such a long legacy in this space. And we thought it still had so much more life in it and more to give the garden. So we thought, all right, we'll just prune it down. A lot of people call these snags, but we call them tree sculptures because snag is not a very appealing word, but tree sculpture is more appropriate. So yeah, and now we scaled it down to an appealing shape. And we've got this American wisteria growing up the trunk. And we see all these different woodpeckers using it, lots of insects. So not only the wildlife really like it, but it's kind of an anchor in that space physically and sort of emblematic of who we are as a garden and our conservation ideals.
I think it's really interesting too that one there has a cable. It had a cable when the tree was old but still alive, and the cable still remains, which is unique to see one of the old frames or the structures of a tree and see the cable still connected there. That's really cool. It's like... Yeah,
don't you love, I bet you both love this too, don't you love seeing some of the old arboriculture techniques and old trees, like the cement, like the metal rods and all these sort of, kind of like seeing old surgical practices from like the Civil War,
Yes.
But it's kind of cool. I kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think to myself now that they use that German Cobra cable now where they don't ever drill into the tree. They use a special fiber. But to see that just kind of makes it even more sculptural because it's there, Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about some of the other areas on the property that you feel are very, I want to say, different and I'm kind of leaning towards the tennis court area in particular. And the entranceway and how you did the parking area, I think is really unique too.
Yeah, the parking area is one of the first areas that we did. And there was a house, believe it or not, a dilapidated house sitting right in the middle of that space and a Norway maple forest surrounding it. So we took out the Norway maples and, of course, demolished the house and put this parking lot in. And we wanted to make sure we were managing our stormwater correctly. So we've got a bioswale in there and a rain garden at the end. But then we also wanted to make it a welcoming space and sort of this place that when you got there, you felt like it was accessible, you know? And so it's a very informal landscape. It's kind of meadow-like on one side. We've got these honey locusts in the bioswale that are golden in the spring. And then we have a bunch of physocarpus that are purple foliage on the other side. So it's sort of this, I think, appealing in a way that it looks effortless, but yet at the same time, there's definitely design to it and intent.
And you have a little cottage there too that you built.
Yeah, we call that the welcome kiosk. It's where our amazing volunteers are stationed when people come in the garden. As I said earlier, we're free every day to everyone except for Monday. So our volunteers will welcome you to the garden, answer any questions you might have, and then you're off to whatever you want to do in the garden and enjoy. But yeah, it's a great space.
And it's not just a kiosk. It's using the stone that the house is made out of.
That one in particular is not the exact same stone. We have reused some of that stone, but not in that building. But it was all hand chipped. The stone was hand chipped, and it's really well done the way they did that. But it's been effective for us.
Yeah, it looks old. It looks old when you pull up. It looks like the age of the house, you know. The other area that I think is really amazing is where you had to reduce your liability. You had to get rid of the swimming pool. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how you manage that? And of course, the hedging around that too, which is really spectacular.
Yeah, it seems like most old estates have some kind of swimming pool, and Stoneleigh was no different. But this one was right in the center of the garden. And, you think, Chanticleer's got that great swimming pool and we all love that. But in this space, it just didn't seem to make sense because we wanted it as more of a focal area. So the pool house itself was built in the 60s and it was okay, but we decided we wanted something bigger. So I actually demolished that and we built another same it looks kind of like the original pool house, but it's bigger and made of stone with these glass doors that open up in the front around the whole, kind of like concertina doors around the whole thing. We use that for events. And then that's overlooking where the swimming pool used to be. So we took out that swimming pool and we wanted a terrace space again so that people could enjoy that and we could have events out there. And so we put this bluestone patio in the shape of the old swimming pool, which was kind of amorphous. It wasn't a square, it wasn't an oval, it was kind of like a mitten almost. And so that's what's there. We've hedged this all in with another mixed hedge that's kind of swooping in on the top of arborvitae and white pines. And it was one of the first landscapes we did. It was fun.
And you have some circular gardens there that are they're bog gardens. You have the Sarracenia in there and the sundews. I think that's so creative.
Well, thanks. Our bog garden plants, the coolest plants out there. I mean, I don't know. They might be like pitcher plants and Venus flytraps and orchids. They're like so charismatic and they're great for kids. When kids come and you cut open one of those pitchers and you crack it open, you see these little fly carcasses in there and wasps. And they love it. They're like, ooh, I'm like, it's so cool. But they also are really good spaces to show how you can include a lot of diverse plant material in a small space. And if we can make our small spaces really diverse, that's going to be really helpful because as land disappears, we have smaller and smaller spaces. So we're all about increasing the diversity of plants in our design palettes.
So can you talk about your tennis court area?
Yeah. There was, in addition to a swimming pool, there was this tennis court. It had been there for like 100 years. And we removed the tennis court. We put in these sitting walls in the very beginning and built a pavilion on the one side of it. But we didn't know what we were going to do next until about 4 years later, we had a person step forward and said they wanted to support a new garden in this space. And specifically, they thought they were interested in water. We were like, wow, that's a great idea because Stoneleigh didn't have any water. So we developed a new water garden in that space, thanks to this very generous person. And we built this kind of, it's about 50 feet long, 18 feet wide, 18 inches tall, made of black granite with water spilling over the metal sides. And we have this huge catalpa that we talked earlier, towering over the whole scene. So we call this space Catalpa Court, kind of a play on words, tennis court Catalpa. And it's a great space. A lot of wild collected plants are in there, dozens of species we collected from our preserves that we've put in that space. So kind of a wild look to it, but some formality with the hedges.
Did the catalpa die of natural causes? They seem to be a plant that lives forever.
Well, the catalpa's doing very well. It's still there. The one that died that we turned into a sculpture is the plane tree.
Oh, okay, got it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
No, the catalpa's alive and well.
Oh, good to hear.
Yeah, that's something we need to make sure that it stays alive because it's so gorgeous.
So I don't think we ever asked Ethan what the footprint of Stoneleigh is. How many acres are you?
42 acres. So pretty good sized. And, we have some buffer spaces around the roads. And that was intentional by the Olmsted brothers who were there for 50 years at Stoneleigh designing. And now we're seeing kind of their design intent. We've got 70-foot tall trees acting as buffers on all four sides, really.
And you're also buffered by, iconic mainline Philadelphia educational institutions, right? You've got Villanova right there and a couple other sizable campuses. So it's a serious green belt. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And people are really passionate about their green. Can you tell us a little bit about Oakwell that just is next door, which used to be part of Stoneleigh a long time ago?
Off the record, of course. I mean, it's a podcast. No one's ever going to know. So.
Right. No one's going to ever know.
Well, no, there's some really exciting news around Oakwell, which is it's a 13-acre property next door to Stoneleigh that was part of the original estate up until the early 1930s. So it's been apart for 100 years. And we've recently entered into an agreement of sale with the local school district to buy this. We're buying 10 acres of it, and we're going to incorporate that into Stoneleigh. We're going to just take up the fence that's there now, and there it is. It's unbelievable. It's such an extraordinary opportunity to reunite these two properties that were designed by the Olmsted brothers. They have shared tree species. They look the same, and they're these wonderful old buildings from the turn of last century. And we really are excited about the possibilities that they would add to what we're doing in the garden.
Yeah, there's a lot more to that story. Someone's probably going to write a book about it, but it is so positive and so, I don't know, it's just so wonderful that it all worked out.
It's extraordinary. It's unbelievable. And we are so grateful that we're able to steward this land that's next to Stoneleigh. And we're so grateful that we're able to hopefully make it available to everyone else to enjoy too.
So currently, your staff, how many people do you keep going full-time and how many people part-time?
We have 8 full-time, 5 part-time. They're awesome. We have such a great team here. I feel so lucky to work alongside them. Everyone has, it's a small team, so we all have to do a lot of different things. And what's great is people have these individual skills or talents that can really help in a small place like this, and they're really great. And then 5 in horticulture, and then a couple part-time staff, like a plant reporter, seasonal horticulturalists, a couple of interns. And so we all have our hands full, but that's part of the fun, right? It's part of the fun is working together to make this place grow.
Yeah.
The idea of feeling like you're working for a very small entity in a larger entity of the natural lands, which is a big organization.
It's wonderful, yeah, to be part of the larger organization and so many great colleagues and coworkers within natural lands that are so helpful to what we're doing. And it's awesome. Yeah.
Well, as we wind it down, Ethan, we always like to ask people what their favorite tree is. Ethan, what is your favorite tree?
All right. I'm not gonna hem haw around about this and say I love every tree, which I do. I think I have 3. Can I say 3?
Yes.
And there's the 3 iconic species of the South: southern magnolia, longleaf pine, and bald cypress. And I spent so much time down there in the swamps, in the pine savannas, in these places, and they just will always be in my heart. They're just such special trees, and they so indicative of where they are and put you in that place and time. So I'm going to say those 3.
And thank you for those 3. I love them. It's going to be interesting to see how southern magnolia comes through this winter, because I'm going to say 2 decades ago, it regularly would take some winter burn and die back. I think we've had those temperatures of single digits where, maybe we got ahead of ourselves a little bit in terms of hardiness. But I hope southern magnolias survive, or at least don't, do that significant browning out that I remember from years ago.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too with these temperatures, but I haven't done this like you all, and you've been in gardening for a long time, so you know that these cold snaps kind of separate the pretenders. They show you who legit plants are, and so we'll find out.
Yeah,
but,
right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves with assisted migration just yet.
Yeah.
I have to share this quick story before we go. I had a client years ago when we did landscaping. It was a Chinese holly, and it was right next to off the patio, the front door, the front porch. And we had serious long days of cold like we're having now. And she called me and she said, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it, but our tree lost every leaf on it." And I said, "Well, let me come over and take a look." And I said, "I don't think you need to worry about it, but let me come over and take a look." And I did. And the stems were fine. It was the leaves that dropped. And I said, "This is all going to come back." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Look, we only have a couple months left till spring." I said, "Let's leave it and see what happens." It came back better than it ever was. And it didn't lose any leaves that fall because they were the only leaves on the tree. But it actually, I kind of think it helped the tree because it gave it an extra boost. They put out on more leaves than it would typically put on. And I just thought it was really funny, but it came back. So you never know.
Don't you love that about horticulture? One of the things I love is I learn something new every day. And every day I'm humbled. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And it's like, you never know it all. And the more you know, in fact, the more you realize you don't know. So I've always appreciated that about it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, it was a delight to have you on. And do you want to shout out your website again so people can check it out and come and visit? And you have to take it in, everybody. You have to take this garden in.
Please come. And we're located in Villanova, Pennsylvania at 1829 County Line Road. Our website is stoneleghgarden.org. And we're open every day except for Monday and Christmas and Thanksgiving. And we would love to see you here in the garden.
And it's walking distance to Route 30, also known as Lancaster Pike. So we know that Ethan gets back to his home county very easily when need be.
That's what I get right on with. We call that, Lincoln Highway in Lancaster, or Route 30, but here it's Lancaster Avenue. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and I also want to say that if anybody has any children going to Villanova University, or anybody who works at Villanova, can just walk back there and visit your garden. Oh, and we forgot one thing. We forgot the hosses, the bunnies. We forgot to mention the bunnies.
We can't forget about the bunnies. Yeah. We have a white oak stump that was 21,000 pounds that was craned onto the property. We had to close the road down for 4 hours, and Shriner Tree Care, shout out to them. They do great work. They did that for us. And we had a chainsaw artist come in. He sculpted it. The bunnies represent the family members from the Haas family. And it's a reproduction of what they had for 20 years before that. So they did this originally, and we reproduced it. And what they did was they had so much fun decorating it for the holidays. They decorated it for like Villanova's graduation. And so we now continue that tradition and decorate it as well with some of the original decorations too, I might add. And it's fun.
That's really cool.
When the staff's decorating,
most people might not know that Haas means hair. That Haas means hair.
Yeah, right.
So rabbits.
Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ethan. This was really fun.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Plant a Trillion Trees podcast is edited by Andromedan Recordings in Hollywood, California.